The best succession plan is developed by the next generation, not the parents.
Welcome to Business Refocused, a podcast about the people, decisions, and strategies behind building a successful business. Each week, we talk with leaders and operators about what they're learning, what's working, and the challenges that come with growth. I'm Lindsay Sexton, and I'm happy to introduce you to my co-host, who just so happens to be my mom, Carey Wallace. Let's get into it. Hey, Mom, how you doing?
I am having a good day, Lindsay. I will tell you, it is steamy hot in my room today, but I got a lot accomplished. So maybe I need to be in like a sweaty room in order to make my progress on my day. Oh my goodness, this air conditioning thing's crazy.
Well, I'm very thankful to have air conditioning today and, all working like freezer and fridge and all of those things. It has been quite the week over here in the Wallace Sexton world of Charleston, but I'm super pumped to dive into our episode today. One of our good friends, John Teen, introduced us to a really great group that does some work that like goes right alongside of the work that we do, but kind of takes it a step further in a couple different directions. So I'm really excited to get into this conversation and have another like parent-child duo on the phone as well. Tom and Catherine, welcome to the show.
Great to be
Thank
here.
you. Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, whenever we get a chance to have like a two-generation team on the show with us, we always jump at the chance because it's such a special relationship to get to work with family, in our opinion.
It is. Yep. It's been a good journey for us. We've got a lot in front of us, but it's been a great journey.
Yeah. So tell us and the listeners, like what it is you guys do. And if you don't mind, start off with how long you two have been working together.
So, Dad, why don't you kick it off with how you started this whole thing, and then I'll jump into how I got started with you.
Okay. So I grew up in family businesses, but none of them were my own. And I had the good fortune of starting my career in a company called Larson Manufacturing. So if you walk into Lowe's or Depot, you'd see those guys in the building products aisles. And I started, it was a second generation family business. And although I knew it was a family business, why I really joined was ultimately what we try to build in all these family businesses. It gave so much back to the employees. And in this particular case, I grew up in a little town in South Dakota where its headquarters were, and they had already built an indoor recreation facility with indoor tennis, indoor hockey, of course, we're up in the upper Midwest. Racquetball back in the day, racquetball was really big, indoor pool, Nautilus equipment. I mean, it was unbelievable for a relatively small organization that was growing. It ultimately has become almost $1 billion organization today. But I got in there at around 20 million. And all of this is in retrospect with the work that I do now of what I learned while I was there. I was just a kid. I got a lot of good breaks. I had a great boss, and I got in the middle of a lot of growth. And so I moved out east. We were expanding the marketplace, and literally they had just hired somebody in the director of marketing who came in and put a map up for the sales team and pointed to the Northeast and said, there's a lot of people that live here. I think if we just sort of land in the middle of that, good things will happen. And, quite frankly, sometimes strategy doesn't need to be complicated. And sometimes it's almost that intuitive. And some luck hit us at the same time. That was in 86, and Home Depot moved out of Atlanta in 86. And now Home Depot is the largest home center in the world. We got on that freight train, and every new Home Depot was a new customer of ours. They were way larger than, like Lindsay and Tom's lumber yard. I mean, these guys had opening orders of 400 or 500 doors, and maybe we sold 50 doors a year to a Lindsay and Tom, Ace store or whatever. So we just grew. Again, I don't have any of that, anything to the table except working hard and opening up distribution centers, hiring people. I moved up and down the coast with those guys and just had a great run with them. Lowe's came out of North Carolina. Of course, they weren't going to just sit and watch Depot, and we know that story, and Menards out in the Midwest. So awesome company. And I went to work then for an early stage startup in a completely different industry. It became a family business, didn't start out that way. Again, we got into rapid growth. This was in the fabric structure business, so like a PGA golf tournament, those big hospitality tents. So we manufactured those, sold them back to the tent rental industry, who then would put on either rent them to the event company or directly to the event. But it's shelters, so lots of things need shelters. We got into sports domes. Tennis is a love of mine, so we got into the tennis business. We got into soccer. We're Philadelphia Eagles practice facility, the military. Again, just a business that took off and ultimately became a family business because we were just desperate to hire people. And so that's kind of, I'm just a kid. I was think at 34, 35 years old. And I remember going to the owner saying, I don't really know what to do, but probably we should have some boundaries maybe, or like they have to have some skills to come in. And, all the classic stuff was happening around nepotism and entitlement and all that. And lots of good people too, just no direction. Ultimately, he asked me to become the president, which never was on my radar. But I did, and I had a just another great run in that company and really kind of earned my MBO or MBA in there. In that, we became a pretty, I won't say, I was going to say solid family business. We had a lot of family in there, but we had a lot of challenges. But I learned a lot. And I started to look back to my Larson days going, well, what did we do there so well? And that we're not duplicating here. And in the meantime, I got involved in another fairly early stage in a whole different industry, in factory automation. And that was an established family business. So I took that opportunity. Another owner who, in this case, he was an engineer, brilliant guy, just knew he wasn't the guy to take the business to the next level. And I couldn't bring anything technically to the business, but I could bring, how to build a business and get to market. And I had that family experience and love and trying to see how to make that work. And so became the president of that company, had a great run. And then that was in the 90s. And then in 2003, I stopped and said, okay, I think this is really what I want to do. Can we build a bunch of Larson manufacturings around, in our case, we primarily in the mid-Atlantic, but everywhere we go, companies that give back to there are all these great companies that, are foundational in their communities. They're the philanthropists. They're the great jobs for not just the next gen that's in ownership, but next gens in the communities. And of course, creating good wealth for the families, and then they can do things of philanthropy and, next gen and all those kind of good things. So
Yeah.
we've got a pretty good formula of how to create generational family businesses, and it takes lots of work. So it's no magic pill, but there's a good process to get there. And so I ran it. I was single shingle for a number of years, hired people, just couldn't quite get the formula to work. And then started to build out a team. And then I'll let Catherine take it from there because she showed up in the middle of building that team.
With a big surprise, I think, to my dad. So, during COVID, after I graduated from college, I got into medical sales and was doing great I worked at two large med device companies, and again, was learning sales, learning how to get rejected constantly, but also learning how to win, and just realizing I'm very competitive in my personal life. So I'm like, ooh, like this is really fun, right? And I can make money doing it. So I really fell in love with it. And during COVID, I was living in Washington, D.C., and obviously everything shut down. And I called up my parents, and none of us, I have three older brothers, and none of us had ever moved home after college. We all, like, that was the goal, was to like not come home after school. And so I called up my parents. I'm like, hey, things are a little crazy here. Like, can I come home for a little bit? And they said, of course you can. So I overstayed my welcome. I went home, what was supposed to be, I think I said like 2 weeks, and I ended up staying, I think, almost 2 months. It was a long time, and it was amazing. So my mom happened to be sick at the time, and just an amazing time at home. But all that to be said, I never planned on joining my dad. That was never really, it was never a conversation. Not for any reason other than I think partially on my end. I'm like, my dad owns the business. He does great work. Like, he's working with clients, but I never really understood like the magnitude of what he did until during COVID. we're all home in the same house and I'm listening to him on Zoom calls. And I'm like, I remember asking my mom, what the heck does dad do? Because he's talking about, of course, not only business, and then during COVID, just the craziness of everybody freaking out about what the heck are we going to do? But then a lot of, personal family matters came up during COVID, which is a lot of the stuff that we get involved with, just again from working with family businesses. So while I was home in that time, I asked him, have you ever thought about any of us joining the business? Of course, I was thinking for myself, and so that was the beginning of our conversation. He asked me to go get some more experience, and we'd continue the conversation. So I did that for 4 more years, and then in 2024, I joined the company, and yeah, it's been a great ride. Crazy how fast. I mean, it's only 2 years, but also I'm like, oh my gosh, time just flies. So I am a family business consultant, and then obviously we've been working on succession planning a lot. So we are truly understanding what it takes to be able to pass a business on to the next generation, which I know is what we're going to talk about a little bit today. So
Yeah.
that's a little bit of my story.
So what kind of businesses do you guys work with? Because it's not only insurance, correct? It's
Right.
multiple. It's any industry.
Yeah, pretty much. I would say what we don't work with. We generally don't work with single restaurants. So we worked with chains, but not generally single. Nothing wrong with them. They're just generally lifestyle businesses. It's hard to follow the money. So we work in that system of the family business. So you got the business, the family, and the ownership domains, right? And they intersect one another. For us to be effective, we need to know what's going on in the business. So if we can't understand it because of the lifestyle business they're running, then we're not much value. So
Yeah.
you just stay out of that. Multi-chains, that's a different story, right? There's more of an enterprise there, and it's deeper. The other is hospital systems. That's just that market changed so dramatically, as we all know, in healthcare. And pretty much all the independent agency or independent physician practices, which we did work with, are all absorbed up underneath the big systems. And that's a whole game of GPOs and IDNs. And that's just not our world. Outside of that,
Yeah.
really agnostic, but where we land a lot, professional services, which I'd put in insurance agencies, right? And we have worked with quite a few because it's a lot of family businesses in your space, right?
Lot.
Construction, contractors, back to professional services, CPA firms, law firms, engineering firms, right? Anything in that realm.
Yeah.
A lot of manufacturing and a lot of food manufacturing. That's probably our favorite spot, because if a family business is involved in food, there's probably a very tight correlation to values, right? And who that family is. And otherwise they wouldn't be doing it, because that's brutal work.
Yeah.
And if they do it well, yeah, it's just incredibly rewarding. One of our big breakthroughs there was Mrs. T's pierogies back in the early
That is my
2000s.
favorite. Listen, here's the deal. Mrs. T's pierogi is my comfort food from
Yeah.
like childhood to now. So you just said the magic word. Like, you are now
Yeah.
my idol. Oh my goodness.
Tom
Like-
Swarzik will be happy to hear that.
We literally,
Yes.
I was at the grocery store this morning, and my husband, like, we're checking out. He goes, "Oh no, how did the pierogies get in there?" And it's always Miss. Like, there's no other brand. That's
I love
hilarious.
it.
So Tom, you said it. Working with people in our industry, I think it's 70% of independent insurance agencies are family owned, and the deepest generational agency that I've worked with is 5 generations deep, which is interesting. I was talking to an agency owner yesterday that he's the 4th generation, and he actually chose to sell his agency because for lots of reasons. But once you are the 3rd or the 4th or the 5th generation, the weight of the need to carry that on is pretty high. And it's just interesting. I have to say, listening to your story and how you got to where you are and what you're now doing, I started in a very small technology startup that was family owned. There was nepotism all over the place. And as a person that was not related, navigating that was also a little different. But most of the work that I'm doing now is in independent insurance agencies. And I think the same thing is true. Small business, large business, doesn't matter. When there's people in your business that are related and people that are not part of the family, you have to have the rules of engagement. You have to set boundaries. You have to run your business like a business, no question about it. So why don't we talk about what some of those boundaries are, and then I'd love to dig into more of the succession of those agencies. But can you just quick off the top of your head, like what should those boundaries look like?
Yeah, and Catherine, you jump in too. I think that, it takes the conscious, just like you guys are doing, I'm sure. You have to be conscious about it, right? Because it's just easy to fall into old habits. There's a classic, we didn't make this up. This has been in the family business circles for years. For what hat are you wearing? Are you wearing your family hat? Are you wearing your ownership hat? Or are you wearing your business hat? All three are important. But the conversation needs to be around one of those, right? It can't, when it's all three, it's super confusing. So having a family conversation at a strategy meeting is completely inappropriate, right? And besides the inappropriateness, what it does to the team, right? Now everybody is, it's awkward. It's it's all the words we all want to use. Like, oh man, how do we get in the middle of this? So big thing is, what hat am I wearing? What's the appropriate conversation at that time? I think the other thing is there's a big difference. There's a big difference between leading the organization and owning the organization. And this happens generally in the second gen, when second gen comes in, but it could even be in the founder, where just because you're the owner doesn't necessarily mean you know everything. That starts everywhere, right? But it's pretty easy to get in your head that you do. And especially if you've been successful, you're like, yeah, I got it. Even if with some humility of like, well, I don't know everything, but we act like we know everything. So it's that humility to first of all recognize you don't, but also, am I leading right now and building an organization that's bigger than me? That's the job. That's the job of all of us, whether we're the founder or we're the next gen. That's the leadership job. I'm building more leaders. Build this thing so it can run without me. That's leading. That's not ownership. Not saying you must do this because I own it or you won't get a check. And that's a boundary that really needs to be kept, because when it's crossed and it comes off as, the boss man, boss woman because of ownership, you'll stall, because A players, good talent, won't tolerate it, right? They'll tolerate it for a little bit. And if that culture is the culture that's embedded in the organization, that's why it will stall out. It won't be because of your greatness that the company is going to be successful, because you build great leaders and you get the hell out of the way so they can help you be successful. So those are a couple things that jump out to me. Kat, what else might you add?
Yeah, I think the one other thing I would add, just of again, what we see in majority family businesses that we've worked with, is the importance of having a role before you join the business. Like, there are so many people we work with that we've been brought in because truthfully, they are now in a predicament where their kid's been working in the business for 10 years and they've never had an actual job. So helping them, and it's never too late, right? Okay, some mistakes made, but that is something that's so important, because talking about nepotism and, oh, they get to do whatever they want because they're so and so's kid or cousin or aunt, uncle, whatever it is. I think that is so important. And along with that comes, what do they get hired at? Is it market rate or is it family rate? Like, what does the compensation look like? What are they actually qualified to do? What skills do they have, right? There's so many pieces of that, and the importance of that conversation, hopefully prior to the next gen joining the family business, I think is really, really important. So that boundary being set early on is crucial.
I think it's a great point. I'll just piggyback on that real quick on what I talked more of the external and how things are perceived by everybody else, which is super important, but also internally, our responsibility bringing in the next gen, the discipline around that, and in a good way, discipline, right? And boundaries. For Catherine, where she entered, even at our lowest position, lowest as in terms of hierarchy in the organization, we couldn't afford what she was getting paid in the med device company, which was a really great med device company. So I had a choice, either break our salary bands, which would have been bad for everybody. It'd been bad for my team, and would have told Catherine, although I know she's really good and she would not have done this, but certainly creates the opportunity for, well, they really don't matter to me. They do matter. So how do we break it? She still gets paid as much as she did, but it comes out of distributions. So it's out of the family distribution. And I'm the 100% owner, so it's out of my distribution. And that's how we make up the difference. That's a choice that we made to say, I want you. I can't pay you a salary that you're commiserate with what you were, but I can make up that delta. And that's just a step back I need to take to invest to go forward.
But not only that, like, not that it doesn't apply, it could actually mean I'm the exception. So if I'm the exception in compensation, I might be the exception in lots of other things inside this agent, and which would be really detrimental. So that is a fantastic point. And I think a lot of our listeners can hear that and think, oh, that's how I solve the thing. Because oftentimes your kids come back, you want them to be the successor. They have successful jobs and they're not sure how to bring them into the agency. And, you know, you certainly can't start them as an account manager. They have plenty of experience, but they also have so much room to grow to be your ops manager, et cetera. So how do I bridge the gap? And the gap is, it comes out of the family money, not the agency money. What a great, what a fantastic recommendation. And especially since it came from what your situation is, you know, like that's fantastic.
Yeah. One of the things I often see in generational family businesses is that the owner is still there, is aging, and, you know, might be resistant to new technology, resistant to trying new things, new strategy. And the person in place, the son, daughter, second generation, however many generation, is like, I can't get this person to leave. I see potential for this or that, but I can't get there because you know, my dad and my mom is just standing in my way. What do I do? What do you guys do when that situation occurs? And what's your advice to agent or companies, right? Not just agencies, but in that position?
Yeah. So that's so common. It's so common, right? It's not just in your space, but in all spaces. I think the biggest thing going up for most, of course, this isn't for everyone. The biggest thing going up for most is, who will I be if I'm not this? You know, the classic, this is my baby, this is my second spouse, all those things. It is. All your friends are there, your relationships, your value, how you perceive as your value. Now I'll go back to Tom Twardzik at Mrs. T's. We were traveling one time. I wanted to take him back and introduce him to Larson, because he wanted to do in Shenandoah, where that company is located, what Dale Larson had done in Brookings with the philanthropy and just the impact that he made. And we were in the airport, and I said, Tom, how are you going to let go? And now this is a guy, he's third generation. So grandma started this in the Catholic Church, you know, this is fundraising, right? You know, after Mass. Dad takes it and builds a fairly decent business through mostly the Northeast and grabs Chicago. That's a big community that pierogi lovers. And then Tom takes it nationwide, gets into Walmart and other national. And so they've got a really great business. I said, how are you going to let go? And he goes, oh, I learned a long time ago that who I am isn't relying on Mrs. T's. And he said, this is old Maslow stuff. Remember the hierarchy of needs of, you know, in school we learned about Maslow's 5 hierarchy of needs, and at the top is self-actualization. He goes, my self-actualization doesn't come from being the owner and president of this company.
Ah, good for him.
And I thought, wow. And I said, when did you start on that? And he goes, I started a long time ago. I'd heard that story too many times of owners that couldn't get on, including my dad. You know, his dad struggled. So it's so common, right? It's finding a purpose that's bigger than the business. And the business is super important and has a great purpose. But, you know, I'm 66. I've been telling people now for 6 years, back in the 60s, you make it to 60 in fairly decent health, you're probably on your way to 90 plus. Now, that's another third of your life. And a good portion of that probably will be without the work that you've been the last 40 years or whatever. What are you going to do? And what's the opportunity to do? How can you move from, all this success to significance? And that could be however it looks like in your life. But to open that possibility, because I think where people get stuck, the senior gen like myself, is they're in their heads, it's about leaving. So we can get them from leaving to what are you going towards? That's a whole
Yeah.
mindset. What are you going towards? What's possible? And going towards doesn't mean everything's gone. Maybe you sit on the board. I think Catherine's going to send me to trade shows probably. I don't know what she's going to do with me when I retire in 3 years, but I won't be completely gone, but I won't be running the show day to day. We're working our tails off to build the organization that does that without me. So, and then you jump in. So that's how we've processed it. And I'm in the space, right? So I've been thinking about it. But we certainly run into families and like that's stuck there. So one of the tools that works really well for families from a governance standpoint, and all governance is kind of some structure to help, either any of those entities, family, ownership, or business operate better. So a structure for the family is a family constitution, where you sit down as a family and the family members working in, and typically their spouses, and you make it as broad as what makes sense. And you discuss, why are we in this business? Why as a family are we in this business? And what are our values, right? Just like we do in a business, core values in a business. What are our values as a family? What are the standards? What are the principles that we stand for? We do genomes, which talks, you go back generations of where we came from, and you start learning about, oh my God, I just thought that's the way we were. Look at grandma did, a great grandfather or great that I never knew. The pride that comes with that, as well as sort of the realization of, oh my goodness, I know more about. Now there's sort of this shared purpose, and then talk about, so what do you want together? What do you want with this business? That vision, that starts to help that senior generation start to think about, because we're also peppering it with, so what's next for you? Like, I don't know, I'm not going to do this, but we hang with it and get them working on that next chapter. But talking about this business is going to transition. What is that? What do you want it to be? Yeah, it starts empowering everybody at that table to both pick up the ball and run with it. It always is. The next gen wants to go fast and the senior gen wants to go slow. And, we're just trying to find that happy medium between. But that process of that family constitution really helps families get clear on why we're doing this in the first place. And what do we really want out of this?
Yeah. So Catherine, when an owner has this happen and they do get stuck, and maybe they stay past the time when they should exit and they're basically retired in place, tell me what you guys do to help an owner see how detrimental that can be for their business, for their team, for their family. What does that look like? And what's that conversation look like, Catherine?
Yeah, I think a big piece of that is helping them realize the confusion that causes, not just the next gen and the current gen, but the rest of the company. Who's making the decisions? Who am I going to? Very often, even if the next gen is in a leadership role and they're making the decisions, or they think they are, that current gen can reverse those decisions and be like, that's fine. Like, I own the company, or I've been doing this forever. And the confusion that brings is huge. I think one of the things that we do, and we do really well, is back to roles and responsibilities, trying to get the current gen out of the day-to-day, not taking away their job or their responsibilities and all that, but they always want to be, shouldn't say always, a lot of times they want to be a part of everything because they built the business. For example, if it's a founder, right? They built the business. I've been doing this for 40 years. I know what I'm doing. But to help them step back and give the opportunity for the next gen to lead. If you don't give that opportunity, how are you ever going to step away? And back to Tom's point, I think that's really more of a family conversation versus a business conversation. There's so much strategy work to be done with the leadership team, and that's great. But this conversation, like when you sit down as a family and you help them really understand and be able to see from, again, having like a third party to say, hey, this is what that looks like. Here's what that's doing to the company. It does open their eyes. A lot of times when we do executive coaching, that's a lot of that deeper work of, why are you doing that? Right. And like digging more into it instead of, that pressure that they feel like, well, slow down. Like, let's really unravel why that is. So, I mean, it sounds so simple, but it really is the conversations that are had and helping them see what that looks like from the outside. But I do feel the biggest piece of that is the confusion that it causes the company, and especially the person trying to step up and be like, come on, like, I'm ready to go. I've been ready.
Yeah.
But helping them understand, I think on both sides of current gen and next gen, I respect the legacy that you've built, and now I'm ready. And I think a lot of times that current gen doesn't realize, things are just going to look different. Like, that's inevitable. But you built the business, or you took it to this now it's going to look different as I take it to this next generation. So again, the deep conversations of that really can impact a lot. So
Yeah. When do you guys think it is the right time to bring in an outside facilitator into these conversations? And when is it not the time to bring in an outside facilitator?
I don't know about not. Okay, where do we enter normally? There's generally
Sure.
Yeah.
some sort of transition happening. We have a transition in the business. The market changed, right? They're looking for somebody to come in and help them from a consulting standpoint. There's a change in family members coming into the business, or that there is succession is in the future, right? They can see it. There's ownership and or any of the challenges, right? I've got family members we're not getting along. Owners can't get on the same page. Those are all triggers that we often get called in to help. And I think going back to your question about the staying embedded and the risks, the risk is definitely the next gen. They may just give up and say, you know what, I gotta move on. I'm not
Mhm.
hanging in here anymore. But also the risk is to the rest of the talent, and that's the whole value of the business. I don't care if you're a manufacturer, you're what, it's the talent, especially in today's day and age. Right, we're all complaining, oh, we can't find talent. The talent will recognize that, and they're not going to hang around if they can't see that this company is ready to go and they can be a part of that next future. But I think again that it's a transition point that we often get a call in. And people don't wake up in the morning and go, you know what, today's the day I'm calling a family business consultant.
Yeah.
I know all of those. They wake up going, I'm so frustrated with my kids fighting in here. I don't like it. I'm so frustrated. Our business is doing well, and yet I had not a minute to breathe. I'm working
Right.
harder than I've ever worked. Those are the things they wake up thinking about. And then either we've met them somewhere around the path, or somebody like John as we've run into, and John said, listen, let me introduce you to this family business consulting firm. This is the work they help you through.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I have one to
And
add.
yeah, go for
Really
it.
quick.
Go for
Yeah. So from the next gen perspective, so obviously you can imagine my role has really been, I naturally will gravitate towards next gens and family business, right? Because we typically are around the same age. We're kind of on the same paths. And from that perspective, we're having the same conversations, and it's just a different day. Like, I don't know how else to get through to the current gen. Like, I need help. That's often a hard way to get in, because typically we need, the buy-in from the current gen.
Right.
But that is a big way that we can help, right? And help facilitate those conversations. So I would say, again, from the next gen perspective, that is what I'm constantly hearing of. I don't know what else to do. Like, we're just talking through the same things. So
Yeah. And you led me 100% to exactly where I was going. Like, when current gen is not open to even some of these discussions, how does future gen bring about that conversation? Maybe bringing someone else's help in, or using some of the strategies you guys have identified in today's episode. Like, how do you recommend, if you were going to give them a piece of advice of how to broach that topic, what does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, some of the tools that we use, right? We've got, 5 reasons that family founders get stuck. It's something that, first of all, almost everybody feels they're the only one that feels like this.
Yeah.
They aren't. But they don't know that. All they know is what they know. They know their business. They know what they've done. And let's say, benefit of the doubt, that most of them have built these really great businesses, some larger and more successful than others. But it's generally all they know. So all the issues they have, either they're embarrassed, they don't want anyone to know about them. I can't believe anybody could relate to this. No, they can. So we've got different pieces that just start to help them. Yeah, like, wow, I didn't know anyone else thought like this. We do a lot of workshops, get them get them around other business owners, right? Other families. We just did an event in May, and I don't know, I think we had 40 or 50 families in there of our clients, and person after person coming up afterwards going, oh my God, this was so good to be around our brethren. I hadn't met that company before. I'd heard about them. I can't believe they're wrestling with the same thing. They're trying to get their kids from the 3rd gen to the 4th gen. And we shared some ideas like that. That's as much as our work is working in the client, we also building this community, because the community can help one another, much like John's done, right? And the alliance, that you get them together, get around their peers, and start to recognize, and what are best practices, and so hearing about best practices are, you've got a succession plan in place, you've talked through transition, you've figured out how you're going to fund the stock transition, you've reviewed your shareholder agreements. You start seeing some of those things going, haven't done that, haven't done that. Can't do it all at once. So where would we start? And, we'll capture that attention with assessments and say, hey, here's everything you probably want to look at over the next 5 to 7 years. Here's probably the place to start. Yeah.
It is incredible how many people feel like I'm the only one in this situation, or I'm the only one dealing with this challenge, or I'm the only one that has children where we're at odds, and the reality is everyone has experienced that. If you're in a family-owned business, that's probably some element of what you're dealing with that every other family-run business is also had that happen at some one point or another. And I find that even in our work, being able to connect the dots and make someone feel like this isn't the first time and there's many ways to solve it, but getting together and actually talking about it and having an objective voice in the room can really, really move you forward in a significant way. So it's funny to me, though, that so many people feel like they're on an island, just like many leaders feel like they're the loneliest role ever, because they don't have that connection with other people that are sitting in that seat. So it's nice that that's part of your process, is to build that community, which is something we try to do as well, which is very, very interesting. So let me just ask you, if you were to put the perfect succession plan out there for someone, what would it look like? Tell me, walk us through, if it was textbook, what would it look like to have a succession plan in a successful agency with multi-generation of family out there?
Yeah. I think that, my Kat, you're going to fill in the gaps, what I miss here.
I will. I'm going to see what you say.
But I think, Carey, that it's a classic depends. A founder generation succession is way different than the sibling succession, much different than the 3rd generation, what we call the cousin federation. They're different types of succession, but let's stay with founder. The biggest challenge for founders is in their head, they think they're looking for themselves. They might not say that. They might be humble enough to go, no, it's not about me. But that's where they're stuck. They think it is about them. The company doesn't need you anymore. That's painful to hear, but you got it here. Look out here 30 years. What's the company need out there? That doesn't mean it's necessarily family. And the goal many times is, I'd like my family to be, but maybe the next gen isn't ready. Maybe they'll never want to take that baton. They can still be owners. Owners don't need to be CEOs. And I think that's where so many of these, especially in that first time around in succession, they think they're tying stock right to leadership. Like, oh my God, no, don't do that. It's 2 different things, right? We need the right leader in the seat to take the company forward. It may or may not be family. And if the real desire is there, then let's invest, not just, a hope and a prayer. Hey, you're 28. I think you're ready to be the CEO. No, what's the leadership track that we're going to put people through? How much work outside of the business? Now, when they're in the business, how much time in each of the departments? How are we going to grade acceptable performance in those? How many direct reports do you need to have before you move to the next level? I mean, really seriously developing somebody, because you started a business at ground zero, let's say, if you're a founder, to whatever you've grown it to, 20, 30, 40, 50 million, and some have done more, but that'd be a pretty decent big growth. The new leader needs to be different than what you were. They're bringing different skills. This is now a company that needs more governance. It needs a little more structure. The talent development that needs to go on. That's a different CEO. So the succession is, what's the business need, and then developing, classic succession language, the competency profile. What are the core competencies that leader needs to have? And then you can take your next gen and match them up to that and go, where are the gaps? And now you've got a development plan, but you also have development plan for other people in the organization.
Sure.
Or to go outside, we've got a clear map of what we need, right? What's that piece need? I think the other piece of that, Carey, is this is unique in our firm, but it's not generally the case. If I'm 66, how old is most of my leadership team? They're all 66 or whatever, right? I mean, it's just the way it went. Now we have a young team, which is great, but it's not just the CEO succession, it's the other key seats that are going to need to be a part of that succession, right? That's super important. Now, as you go to second and third generation, I think the challenge is it's not about a single seat.
Yeah.
Can you align that? Can you align the siblings? If it is going to be more than one child, if it is, true family business transition, as owners anyway, we won't talk about the leadership yet. Can you align them and to have them work well together as a team? And if they're working in the business, that they're aligned and they're clear. Kat said it earlier about their roles and are good with their roles, right? The best succession plan is developed by the next generation, not the parents. If the next generation's healthy, the parents have raised them well, for them to define the leadership succession. I think Jim should be whatever, and come back to the parents and go, here's how we see it. This is the development we think we need. Wow, you've taken the parents out of that. Sometimes they're just agonizing over, how am I going to pick between the kids and who's going to be the leader? And let the kids figure that out. They can't all, but sometimes with help from companies like ourselves or on their own, they do get there. You go to the third generation, the cousin federation, really that alignment. Again, I'm a big advocate of somebody needs to be the president. You can't run a business by committee. And I know some people argue with me and go, well, we do. It's very rare. It's very difficult, but they need to be aligned. Yeah, you've got a lot of personality, probably going to have ownership that's spread out, distributed, and you're also going to have leadership distributed. That alignment and succession is going to be really critical there as well. So.
Yeah. Well, we could talk about this topic for hours. It's fascinating. I absolutely love that there are so many family-run businesses doing incredible work in their community and creating generational wealth. Like, I think that a service like yours is invaluable. And we will make sure that we put all of your information in our show notes. So if somebody's thinking, man, they're describing me, I need to talk to them, I need to think about this differently, we will make sure that they are connected to you both. But Tom and Catherine, thank you so much for being our guests today. And it's a pleasure talking to you. I have a feeling we'll be inviting you back to have this conversation and dig into all kinds of different areas. So thank you both very much.
Yeah, thank you. It was really great to be here.
Absolutely. Thank you both. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much for tuning in to the Insurance Refocused podcast. If you enjoyed the episode, please be sure to hit subscribe and leave us a review so you'll never miss us. Want to learn more about how Agency Focus can help you grow your agency? Head to agency-focus.com or email Carey directly at carey@agency-focus.com. If you need to get in touch with me, feel free to shoot me an email at lindsay@agency-focus.com. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week.